All right, so this time you've given us a whole bunch of stuff about becoming a field survey manager, career guides, interview tips, even AI stuff. Where do we even start with all this?
Well, instead of packing our backpacks, I guess we're going to unpack all these sources and see what we can learn about this career.
I like that. So no compasses needed for this expedition, but um, let's start with the basics. Like, who is this field survey manager? What do they even do?
It's actually a lot more dynamic than you might think. At least based on these materials, it doesn't seem like it's just sitting at a desk. Um, they're leading teams, solving problems. And yeah, one source even mentioned getting their hands dirty.
Yeah, they're not afraid of a little mud, it
Uh,
seems, but it's not all about land surveying, is it? I was pretty surprised by all the different applications mentioned.
You're right, it's a lot broader than it might seem at first. We're talking about environmental assessments, market research, even archaeology was in there, which I thought was really interesting.
Archaeology, I wouldn't have expected that. What's the connection there?
Well, if you think about it, archaeologists are already doing these really detailed surveys to find and preserve historical sites. They're mapping things, collecting data, analyzing it, and those are all things a field survey manager needs in any field. It seems like a big part of it is understanding what the data actually means, not just collecting it.
That's a great point. It's like telling a story with data, whether it's historical, environmental, or whatever. And speaking of tools, it looks like technology is a big deal in this field.
Yeah, it's only becoming more important. Drones for aerial surveys, remote sensing to collect data from far away,
Yep.
and then all the software to process and analyze it all.
Drones, remote sensing, that all sounds so high tech.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about remote sensing and how it's changing things for field survey managers?
Basically, imagine collecting data about a huge area without even having to go there. That's what remote sensing can do. It uses satellites or aircraft to gather the information, usually with sensors that can detect things we can't even see. It lets them cover way more ground and get to places that would be difficult or impossible to reach on foot. So yeah, it's really changing how they do their jobs.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds like you need to be comfortable with technology leadership and even a little bit of adventure to be a field survey manager. It's definitely not just someone with a tripod like I pictured.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that actually makes me think of another important thing that came up a lot, communication and working with clients. It seems like it's not a solitary job at all. You
Sure.
need to be good with people.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit. Why is working with clients so important for a field survey manager?
Well, they're the ones who actually have to take all that data and make it understandable for the people who need to use it.
Yeah.
They need to figure out what the client really wants, explain the findings in a way that makes sense, and probably manage expectations along the way, too.
So, like a data storyteller kind of turning something complicated into something meaningful? I get it. So, someone's thinking about this career path. Is this the right job for just anyone?
Good question. And like you'd expect, there are definitely pros and cons. The RoleCatcher guide you gave us actually had a really good section about this. On the plus side, there's travel working outside and being in charge of a team, all pretty nice perks for the right person.
Yeah, those do sound amazing.
Yeah.
What about the downsides, though? Anything someone should really think about before jumping into this field?
Well, it's not all fun and games with drones and archaeology. There are definitely challenges like really tight deadlines, the possibility of long hours, and of course, dealing with weather you can't control. You got to be flexible, handle the unexpected, and be okay with not working in a typical office.
Sounds like you need to be okay with the technical side and the unpredictable field work. That's good to know for anyone who might be romanticizing this job a bit. So, what about job security? One source mentioned there's a steady demand for field survey managers.
Yeah, and that actually goes back to what we were saying before about technology. As more and more industries need data to make decisions, they're going to need people who can go out and collect it, analyze it, and understand it. So I think the demand is only going to keep growing.
So, knowing your data analysis and technology is definitely a good thing. What if someone's hearing all this and they want to become a field survey manager? What should they study?
The obvious ones are surveying, geography, and environmental science. But I was surprised to see anthropology and archaeology listed as good options too. It shows how much they value understanding the context and how humans impact things, which makes sense for this role.
It does seem like a field that values different skills and perspectives. What about beyond the degrees themselves? Are there skills someone should focus on if they want to be really good at this job?
Across the board, strong math skills and critical thinking came up a lot. You're dealing with measurements and calculations and analyzing data, so those are essential. Plus, like we said before, communication is key, explaining technical stuff to non-technical people, presenting findings to clients, being a good leader. It all matters.
Right. So it's not enough to just be good with numbers. You have to make those numbers make sense for other people. Did anything else stand out to you as far as skills or qualifications they were looking for?
RoleCatcher really emphasized project management and data analysis skills, which makes sense. Having a good handle on those can make you a much stronger candidate. They even have this AI-powered interview prep thing to help people get better at those skills.
AI-powered interview prep, that sounds like something out of the future. How does that work? And do you think that's how everyone will be prepping for interviews soon?
It basically uses AI to create like a mock interview, analyzes how you answer questions, and then gives you feedback. It's like having a personal coach, but, virtual. That's really interesting, and it seems like it's getting more popular. It probably won't replace the usual ways of prepping for interviews, but it's definitely a cool tool to have. So speaking of interviews, let's say you get one for a field survey manager position. What kinds of questions should you expect?
Yeah, what are you going to ask?
Well, luckily for us, RoleCatcher has that huge database of real interview questions, and they gave us some examples. One that stood out and it makes sense is, how do you make sure the data you collect is accurate and you're doing it efficiently?
That makes sense. It's all about accuracy and efficiency for this job. But I bet there's a better way to answer it than just rattling off a list of procedures.
Oh, for sure. You really want to show them you understand what it takes to do this kind of work in the real world. Instead of just talking about protocols, you could give them some examples of how you've done it before. Like maybe you had a system for double-checking GPS coordinates, or you set up some really thorough quality control checks while you were out in the field.
Right, show them you're proactive and care about getting it right.
And don't forget the efficiently part.
Mm.
Time is always a factor in this kind of work. So you can mention using technology to speed things up or how you organize your team to be as efficient as possible. Like maybe you've used those mobile data collection tools or you figured out how to delegate tasks really well when you're on site.
Those are such good points. It's one thing to say you can handle the demands of the job, but it's another to show them you've already done it. So let's say everything goes great, you nail the interview, you get the job, congratulations. What happens next? What does a typical career path look like?
That's where RoleCatcher had a really useful section. They actually map out the different stages you might go through. Like you could start as a field survey assistant, get some experience, learn the ropes, then move up to field surveyor and eventually become a manager.
So there's definitely room to grow. Are there certifications or anything like that that would help someone move up faster?
Definitely. The Project Management Professional Certification, or PMP, came up a few times. And that makes sense considering how much project management is involved in this job. Having that certification could really give you an edge.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes those tight deadlines and big projects seem a little less scary. Any other advice for someone who wants to be at the top of their game in this field?
Networking. It sounds simple, but building relationships with other people in your field can open up so many doors. You can go to conferences, join professional organizations, even just be active on LinkedIn. It all makes a difference.
It's all about connecting and staying up to date. So before we wrap up our deep dive into the field survey manager world, what really stuck out to you from all this research?
Honestly, the thing that resonated with me most is how much they emphasize data accuracy. It's not just about collecting data. You have to make absolutely sure it's reliable and trustworthy because people are using it to make big decisions about things like the environment, construction projects, even preserving history.
That's a really good point. It's a big responsibility. You're not just collecting numbers, you're kind of a guardian of important information. It's a fascinating field with so much potential, and honestly, we've just scratched the surface. If you're thinking about this career path, keep learning, keep exploring. There's a lot out there to discover. And with that, we're wrapping up our deep dive into the life of a field survey manager. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Until next time.